The intended ceasefire, another one, did not last long. Ukraine says that Russia has largely failed to respect a 12-hour pause in the hostilities to allow civilians from the worst affected areas to leave bombarded cities. Only 2 of those evacuation corridors were definitely opened, leaving from Sumy and Borodyanka near Kyiv. There are mixed reports over 3 other corridors, though it's thought that some were able to leave the city of Enerhodar. And of course, we know that the evacuation of Mariupol was, for the 5th day running, made impossible by Russian bombing. Those developments amount to another day where the hopes for a ceasefire came and went, and where Ukraine's younger citizens are once again bearing some of the heaviest burdens. And a warning, my report, again, does contain some very distressing images from the very start. It's hard to know where to look, or indeed what to say. A heavily pregnant woman, perhaps on the verge of labor, getting stretchered away from what used to be the Women and Children's Hospital in Mariupol. Children comforted by soldiers who are barely adults. A girl dazed. A mother gripping her child as if containing the life in it.
Оказываем помощь пораненым, готовим их к эвакуации. Роддом города Мариуполь.
It is a miracle that only 17 civilians were injured here and no one was killed. Why would Russia bomb this hospital? And what kind of weapon makes a crater like this? Whatever they used, targeting hospitals is a war crime. This was the rest of Mariupol's hospital district. An apocalyptic shadow of its former self. And remember, this is a city in which people are trapped because the Russians have gone against their word and prevented any civilian evacuation. We have seen Russia level this kind of devastation before, but not in Russian-speaking towns and cities that they had pledged to liberate. It all begs the question, if Moscow is prepared to do this, what else is it prepared to do? In Mariupol, they haven't been allowed to evacuate. In Irpin, west of the capital, they have. But they're fleeing into Kyiv, which is waiting for the Russian onslaught. A steady flow of humanity across the Irpin River. And remember, just 2 weeks ago, at this hour, these people were still living normal lives. While the indiscriminate bombing of civilian targets continues, in the mud around Sumy, more evidence of the Russian land assault stalling. This column of tanks didn't survive the shoulder-launched missiles provided by the British government.
Підбили, до речі, подарунками від її величності британської королеви, так що передавайте нам такої движухи більше, і буде отаких танків підбитих набагато більше.
And so to the casualties. The Russians have admitted to at least 500 dead soldiers. The Ukrainians claim they've killed 12,000 Russians. One suspects that neither number is accurate. The Ukrainians never released the number of their fallen in uniform, but we came across this funeral in Lviv. Ivan Kovrazniev was a professional officer, and Viktor Duda was a journalist for the local paper before he became a soldier. The young men with their brand new uniforms, waiting to be sent to the front, are barely adults. But everyone in Ukraine has had to grow up fast. The season of grief is only just beginning, but their sorrow feeds their rage and thus their ability to resist. Now in the middle of the war, or later during any Russian occupation. Lviv is one of the architectural gems of Middle Europe. Even the Nazis spared its architecture. But the people of this city are not taking any chances. That's why the church windows are getting armor and the Baroque statues are getting wrapped for protection. Russia may be intent on destroying the hardware of the Ukrainian state, but the software of the nation is only growing stronger. This is the statue of Taras Shevchenko, the former serf who became Ukraine's most cherished national poet and artist. His statue here is still unwrapped because today was his 208th birthday. An occasion to celebrate what this nation means to those who are prepared to die for it. Ukraine has not yet perished, and nor has glory and freedom, the refrain of the national anthem, defiant and dark. Well, earlier I spoke to the Ukrainian MP Dmitry Gurin, who is from Mariupol, where his parents are still trapped. I began by asking him what life has been like for his family.
My parents, unfortunately, are in Mariupol, and they can't leave the city because Russian troops are blocking the humanitarian corridors and fighting over humanitarian corridors. And it's fourth day already of this nonsense. And the really maternity hospital was bombed today. It was airstrike. That's end of story. It's totally destroyed. There are people under rubble, and nobody understands how many people. As for now, we know only about 17 wounded. We don't know yet about children. We don't know yet about death, but the Mariupol local authorities, they continue to find people.
Was this a war crime?
Of course, they're shelling their residential areas, carpet bombing. My parents that live on the easternmost part of the city that is accessible by Russian artillery, and their house, their building were hit by artillery. People now are without electricity, without heat, without gas, almost without cell phones, without water. And they're out of water. They're collecting snow to have water, and they're preparing food on the open fire near their buildings and live in basements. And there is one thing I want to tell to your audience. Guys, you have to understand where is the line for you. If this line is just killing Ukrainians, I don't know if our blood is red enough for you. Or this line is bombing of Poznan or bombing of Warsaw, because if you think that people that can bomb civil districts, it's not the point for them in which country they do it. If you can bomb civilians, you can bomb it anywhere. So now you decide only if you will have this war on your territory or you will have this war on Ukrainian territory.
Tell me more about your parents. You must be very worried about them. How old are they, and where will they go if they get out?
They're 67 and 69. I'm just thinking every night, I'm thinking that I have heating and they don't. That I'm in my bed and they're in the basement and there is -7 and I can prepare food, and they need to cut the tree in there near the building and prepare this food on the open fire. And I propose everybody in Europe just to think about it in a practical way. Do you have enough bomb shelters? Do you have toilets in your bomb shelters? That's the question that we, now know about how it has to be done. Do you have enough water supply in your cities, enough food in your cities? What will you do when Russian army will siege your cities?
Dmitry Gurin, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Well, on the same day that Russia bombed another hospital, the WHO warned of an emerging health crisis triggered by this war. It said other medical facilities are being abandoned because they simply cannot function. And the millions of refugees on the move with a lack of access to medicine and treatment create the conditions for infectious diseases like COVID, TB and measles to spread very fast indeed. Well, our health and social care editor, Victoria MacDonald, has been looking at the health implications of this war in a country that was already running low on oxygen last week.
A destroyed medical centre in Izyum in the eastern Kharkiv region. The outraged deputy mayor videoing.
Це найсучасніше приймальне відділення, яке було збудовано буквально півроку тому. Буквально півроку. Ось подивіться. Просто подивіться. Мабуть, тут була якась мілітаристська база.
It is not yet known if there were any casualties. Today, the World Health Organization warned of the health system in Ukraine becoming engulfed in this crisis. 1,000 healthcare facilities, including hospitals, are either on the front lines or within 10 kilometers.
It is the violence and it is the conflict that is driving this health crisis. And this health crisis will not stop. It will only get worse unless we have ceasefire, unless we have peace.
Yet shortly after the WHO finished its press briefing, news came through of the bombing of this maternity and children's hospital in Mariupol. Where the bombs have not fallen, the struggle is of a different nature.
We've seen now that some hospitals are being abandoned by the authorities because they simply cannot function. And there's an attempt to move hospital equipment and move doctors and nurses around. So this is becoming an extremely complex health response.
And lest we forget, this conflict is playing out against the backdrop of a global pandemic, with little over 34% of Ukraine's population fully vaccinated against COVID. Now millions of them are on the move into neighbouring countries with similarly low rates, like Moldova, where 39% are fully jabbed, and Romania, where it's 42%. In fact, none of the countries that surround Ukraine, bar Hungary, have fully vaccinated more than 60% of their populations. Those who remain behind talk of the COVID cough in the basements of Ukraine being used for bomb shelters, and few doubt there will be a rise in infections as testing and vaccinations grind to a halt. There are the other diseases too, cancers. Children have had to be moved to Poland for treatment, and now there are warnings of a shortage of HIV medicines.
The number of places have very limited stocks now. The problem is not to bring in medicines to Ukraine. The problem is how to deliver those medicines inside the country to where they are needed, as moving around in the country is becoming more and more difficult.
The international calls to protect health workers, hospitals and medical services are being made repeatedly. But as they pick their way through the rubble in Mariupol, they are clearly not being heard.
Now, with the Ukrainian government desperate for more ways to protect its skies, a Polish plan to pass MiG-29 jets to Ukraine in return for equipment in kind from the United States must have seemed very welcome indeed. But it appears that Poland hadn't run the details past the Biden administration. Within hours, a statement from the Pentagon said that the scheme was not tenable and raised serious concerns for the NATO alliance. Our North America correspondent Siobhan Kennedy has the details.
Vice President Kamala Harris departs Washington, D.C. on her way to Warsaw in Poland, a trip that was supposed to highlight the strength and unity of NATO, now a mission to cover the first cracks of division in the alliance since the Russian invasion began. Ukraine's President Zelensky knows NATO won't budge when it comes to closing the skies over his country, so he's pressing for the next best thing instead: fighter planes and anti-aircraft missiles to protect them. Zelensky invoked the renowned words of Winston Churchill in Parliament yesterday. We will fight to the end, on land, on sea, in the air. As he called yet again for a no-fly zone and pleaded for help to make Ukrainian skies safe, Poland finally answered the call, suddenly announcing it would transfer all its MiG-29 fighter jets to a US airbase in Germany for onward transfer to Ukraine. The authorities of the Republic of Poland are ready to deploy all their MiG-29 jets to the Ramstein airbase and place them at the disposal of the government of the United States of America. But it was news to America, the surprise of one of its top diplomats visible during a committee hearing yesterday.
So, Chairman, I saw that announcement by the government of Poland as I was literally driving here today. To my knowledge, it wasn't pre-consulted with us that they plan to give these planes to us.
The US and Poland had been working behind the scenes to find a way to move the fighter jets without antagonising Russia and potentially dragging NATO into war. But Poland seemingly made the final decision unilaterally in a move that many fear will up the ante with Moscow. That's certainly how the Pentagon saw it, saying the proposal was not tenable. And today, the Secretary of State, in a joint press conference with the UK's Foreign Secretary, explained why.
Fighter jets at the disposal of the United States government, departing from a U.S. NATO base in Germany to fly into airspace contested with Russia over Ukraine raises some serious concerns for the entire NATO alliance. So we have to work through the specifics of these things going forward. And it's not simply clear to us that there's a substantive rationale for doing it in the way that was put forward yesterday.
There's every rationale. If we don't do something now, millions of innocent Ukrainians are going to die.
Tough words amid a growing outcry from US foreign policy experts, if not politicians, for the Biden administration to go further.
The White House is afraid of its own shadow. That's the real truth, and no one wants to say it. They're afraid of the Russians. They're afraid of escalation. This will not cause an escalation. The only thing that we can do right now as the West to get Vladimir Putin to stand down is to show some strength.
But showing strength defensively is different from providing attack fighter jets, even if that means disharmony among NATO allies. The US says it hasn't ruled it out, but insists it has to be done in the right way, whatever the right way in this war may be. Well, the shelling of the maternity hospital today has really underscored the urgency of getting military assistance to Ukraine. We saw President Zelensky's tweets begging for a no-fly zone, and we know that he wants those MiG jets transferred as soon as possible. And yet there was clearly no decision from Secretary Blinken having been made today as to whether or not or when those jets will be transferred. He was quick to reiterate, of course, that no American boots would step foot on Ukrainian soil and that NATO would not sanction that no-fly zone that President Zelensky is so desperate for. He hasn't ruled out Poland's proposal, but he simply says it has to be done in the right way, as you saw there in my piece. But he is not saying what that right way will be. The US is clearly extremely reluctant still to do anything that might antagonize Russia and drag NATO into an unwanted war. Certainly we could hear more about it during a Pentagon press conference, which is due to start any moment. And the Vice President, Kamala Harris, will certainly have her diplomatic work cut out for her when she is due to land in Warsaw in Poland any moment.
Siobhan Kennedy in Washington, thank you very much indeed. Well, earlier I spoke to Maria Adida, a security analyst and research director for a Ukrainian think tank. She is in Kyiv and has decided to stay despite heavy attacks from Russian forces in order to collect video evidence of the destruction and damage being wrought there. I began by asking her why she felt such a decision was necessary.
I have been researching Russian disinformation since 2014 because I saw what consequences lead the massive spread of fake news and disinformation back then. And well, now and before the war started here in Ukraine, I saw again the massing of disinformation and fake news from Russia. And when I saw it, I felt that it is my duty now not only to reveal the disinformation, but also to show the consequences of Russian strikes here in Kharkiv, because I'm here in the city, on the ground, and I can show by myself what is actually happening. And because we are collecting now evidences of the war crimes committed against the citizens of Ukraine, and I think I can contribute to this, being the citizen of Ukraine and staying here in Kharkiv.
I don't know if you've been outside today yet. What have you seen today, or just in recent days when you've been outside your house?
Yes, I've been today, and it is very hard to see Kharkiv like this. It is really cold outside, and it is snowing, and so the city is completely destroyed, and the center of the city without people, deserted town, the deserted city center. And I have been to the place called the Square of the Heavenly Hundreds, so named after those Ukrainians who died in 2014 on Maidan, fighting for Ukrainian independence. And the Russian rocket hit there late on Sunday, and it is a huge hole just on the center of the square, and all the historical buildings beside the square are now completely ruined.
Chernobyl, the nuclear power plant, we heard today that the Russians, who've now in control of it, turned off the power. There was a danger that this would cause a leak. That apparently has now gone away. Do you think that Chernobyl is being used by the Russians as a kind of bargaining chip here?
Absolutely, not only Chernobyl, but also Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which is now completely controlled by Russian troops. And yesterday, the Minister of Energy made a statement saying that the personnel on the station is held hostages. And what we see now is that Russia might prepare for some kind of false flag operation, because I see in Russian media all the time they circulate information that Ukraine is allegedly preparing a dirty nuclear bomb. That means that any moment Russia initially can organize such kind of false flag operation to accuse Ukraine in that, and that is very threatening. And also, besides these two nuclear power plants, there was an attack on Kharkiv Institute of Physics and Technology, which also has nuclear facilities for experimental purposes. It was shelled a couple of days ago. So we have already 3 cases connected with this nuclear facilities, right. And it is very threatening because nuclear energy has no boundaries.
Maria Adiva, thank you very much indeed for your insights, and look after yourself.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Well, here, the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, is facing a backlash, including from MPs on her own side, for the UK's response to the refugee crisis brought about by the war in Ukraine, with under 1,000 visas given to Ukrainians so far. Today, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK spoke to MPs about what more the UK could do, and it emerged that the new centre set up by the Home Office in Lille will be by invitation only. From Calais, here's Anya Pop.
On a clear day, you can see the outline of the UK from the shores of Calais. But for those seeking refuge, it can still feel a million miles away. Ukrainians fleeing war are the latest group to experience the slow bureaucracy of the British immigration system. Anna, her 2 younger siblings, parents, dog and guinea pigs all squeezed in their car to drive to safety from their home in the Kyiv region of Ukraine. Now they're all having to squeeze back in to drive the almost 400-mile round trip to Paris for a second UK visa appointment.
We need we'll drive then.
Back to Paris?
Yeah, back to Paris.
Why?
For visa.
For visa?
Yeah, yeah.
So you went yesterday?
Yeah.
Then you came to Calais?
Yeah.
And now you have to go back?
Yeah.
Ukrainians in Calais are having to travel to Paris because though the UK government is opening a new visa centre 70 miles away in Lille, it's not yet functional.
Even if it will be in Ukrainian, I think it will be hard.
Tetiana's dad lives in the UK. She walked by foot across the Ukrainian border 10 days ago with her mum and brother.
Romanian people met us and gave us food and shelter, and then they helped us with to find a bus. And then we came here. We thought there will be no need for a visa, but then they told us to get a visa. So we applied, and now we're waiting.
She's been helping other Ukrainians who are struggling with the process.
Application is so hard. A lot of people coming to me and asking, please do this for us, please do, because we don't know English, and it's so hard to apply.
The deputy mayor of Calais claims only 9 Ukrainian refugees in the town have been given a UK visa so far.
We don't know what the English government is playing at. We heard yesterday that within 24 hours some solutions would be found to raise the visas. But we don't have any answer. People still arriving thinking the visas are made in Calais. They're not. The English government said they will be welcome in England, but I've got the feeling that it's only words.
Madia's parents moved to Ukraine from Afghanistan before she was born in the 90s. She's never asked them why they left, but needs no explanation this time around.
My mom actually started panicked when the war started in Ukraine because we heard the sound of bombs near our house.
The UK government has promised to speed up the process and increase capacity at their visa centres. But until that happens, Ukrainians with family in the UK have to wait to end the long journey that they wish they never had to make.
Well, Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, Vladimir Putin, told a committee of MPs about the delays his own wife had faced getting a visa when he'd already been appointed to his post in London.
Even when I was coming here as ambassador, I got my visa on time, although I was already approved by your government half a year. My wife didn't have it. So even simple things like that, and bureaucracy is so tough. And when we reached agreement of visa-free regime with Europeans, which worked quite beautifully for almost 10 years, we never managed to open this particular nation.
Well, I've been speaking to the ambassador and started by asking him for his assessment of the way Ukrainian refugees are being treated across Europe.
We're happy that our people have been treated quite well, and we understand what the strain is putting people, especially the nations next to us, what the resources are needed to, to handle all these people, and what the generosity people are showing to get my people back to their homes, to allow them, to settle for a couple of days, to understand where they are, what to do, and, to just sleep well and eat something. There are 800,000 already crossed to Poland only. We understand how difficult it is for many nations to cope with such numbers.
Would you like to see Britain take the same bureaucracy axing approach that the European Union has?
Bureaucracy, I believe, is not a time for bureaucracy. People are suffering right now, and as it happens in most of the cases of such a catastrophe, people sometimes don't even have the documents with them. They were living and they are fleeing for their lives. So we have to ease some of the procedures, and we have to allow as many people as possible in. I understand the security precautions and security checks have to be done, but this we can help. These procedures should go much, much easier than they are now.
Yes, British politicians keep talking about the risk of Russia infiltrating the refugees in some way, and this posing a security risk to Britain. Is this a big risk?
No, I don't believe so. Most of these people who are now fleeing, this is women with children. I don't believe that 1 year old kid can pose any risk, any terrorist risk. Most of the men are getting back home and they're fighting. So you won't have anybody on here even younger than 60 years old. That's the threshold which allows men to go with the families. All of them, rest of them will stay home and fight.
President Zelensky has posted some pictures from Mariupol today of what he says is a maternity hospital that has been hit. He says, close the skies. What does that mean?
The superiority of Russians in our sky are not allowing even to perform humanitarian operation. We can't get people out. Today was the first day when we started to move in people in these places. But unfortunately, the bombs are still falling on our hospitals, schools. So many schools are already destroyed. So many people already killed just because they indiscriminately bomb in our cities, trying to break the will of Ukrainians.
I'm just trying to understand the scale of it, because if you compare what happened in Ukraine to what happened in Syria we saw about 5 or 6 million people leave the country and become refugees. Syria has half the population of Ukraine. So we could be seeing something much, much bigger than we've ever seen in our lifetimes.
I agree with you. We already know that 7 million people are already displaced. They are somewhere in huge Ukraine, which is the biggest by territory in European continent. They are moving right now towards western border of Ukraine, to the European continent, where we feel that this is safe. That's where our home is. And more than 1 million already crossed the border. So I know that 800,000 even plus in Poland, in Polish Republic already. So they are going over this border. Part of what we are talking about, non-fly zone, I guess that should be established over this enormous logistical operation which is now on the border between Ukraine, Poland and Slovak Republic, just to secure that these people can get through these bureaucratic procedures fast and move somewhere where it is safe. But numbers, you're right, numbers can grow.
Ambassador, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.